All right, so we're ready to go. We just need to make sure this is fully muted. Actually, what's my... Okay. Yeah, I'll give it until 35.
Too late to go in.
So, oh, yeah. It's all right. That.
Oh, we'll call for dinner. Like, it's
I'm not going to be calling. I'm just going to be opening some choosing standards and I think it works better. We'll see how it goes.
So chances are most likely they won't really have a chance to bring across the publish and go and find out.
Because I felt like it worked better yesterday. Right. Did you sign the clean sheet? Go. Um,
Oh yeah, also it was like slowly flooding whiteboard later on. I do want to like have it set up.
no, just slowly would be in the way.
Oh, triple with those.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
You ready?
Think so.
Um, I think yeah. Hello everybody. We'll get started now. Some people are still coming in, but we'll start anyways. Before we start there will be a recording. Code will be made available. Slides will be made available. It's all on YouTube. We're live streaming right now. But yeah, the code will be attached in a comment and pinned, and all of that will be made available. Before we get started, I just wanted to say that. And now, yep, I'm muted. Okay. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend such respects to those present with us here today. So today, Raphael will be presenting some of the workshop. Avjay, who was going to present the second half, unfortunately couldn't join us today, so I'll be presenting the second half. But Raphael, do you want to do a quick intro about yourself?
Yes. Hello, my name is Source. Currently a third year in Poland, but I am an education officer, and I'll help say alongside Rama and Ajay's work here to kind of explain the front end of what hopefully might be a project in Codebrew. It might also be the first time that you're coming into this and learning about web development or app development. And so yeah, feel free to just kind of work on your own personal project or follow along with us.
Cool. But yeah, as I said, Avjay is now a finalist in the debating competition that's running this week. So unfortunately, he couldn't join us, but he's done a lot of the work that is the foundation of this workshop. But yeah, I'll pass it over. You get started, and I'll sit on the side.
All right. Coming. Could we get quick poll and hands up as response? Awesome. And with the people that put their hands up, has anyone here never done Codebrew before? Awesome. Anyone that hasn't done it, that's completely normal. That is the opportunity that we like to give the students today. And this workshop alongside two other workshops, which you may have been to, back end yesterday with DevOps, which will be happening at 3 p.m. today as well, will be the kind of the encapsulation of what we want to give as a starter package source. This will be the example that we want to set as to what approach we go through to go through the projects, as well as what you might want to learn from basics. Yeah. As you can see here, we've set up QR codes and links for anyone who wants to directly access the slides or the final GitHub repository, which will have the final product of the project today. So at the end of the day, what we want to transfer is the theory that we want to teach everyone on front-end development and heading that into the practical side of the project we want to give. Because at the end of the day, the best way to learn is by doing. You're not going to learn as much just by having my voice come through one ear and possibly out the other. The best way is to get hands-on, make the mistakes, and just trying to learn from them, and I guess setting the initiative to do your own thing, to kind of start from where we're gonna go, and then set your own pace from there. And of course, we have, apologies for that. Of course, we have an attribution that the practical components that you'll be seeing here today for the workshop was possible because of projects and code made specifically by James Grimshaw. And all the links to his socials along with his GitHub are below. Okay, going on into the theory, we first want to understand what is front-end development. It's essentially building the websites and applications from a user's perspective. As you may have heard of UI UX design, where they produce kind of the content and ideas that want to be built in the website, we add that specific functionality from the user interface side, and that kind of deals with multiple languages. Languages depending on how you want to interpret that. You'd start off with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then from there, you can build up to any sort of modules, libraries, frameworks that you want to see fit for your project. But in the end, front end is not an individual project. Front end is always going to be integrated with back end and DevOps and everything in between to finalize um, your Codebrew result or your personal project. And so, what will we be making today, or essentially be showcasing for the final product? It's basically a notes app. We're hoping to kind of get the version 0.0000001 of Notion. We're aiming to have a responsive user interface that can specifically add, delete, edit, and display note pages. And applying the concepts that we're going to be learning today for front end, we'll be using React, more specifically React.js, and a build tool that you'll be learning called Vite. Before all of that, the basics of basics, understanding what HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The hypertext markup language is a common building block for any website that you might see online. It creates the meaning and structure of what you see and what you interact with. However, cascading style sheets are more so exactly how it mentions the stylization of the website and how you want it to look, whether it's aesthetically or whether you're trying to, um, I guess, cater towards a certain theme. Finally, we have JavaScript. If HTML is the basic building blocks and CSS is the stylization, JavaScript is where you can have everything interact with each other, where you're able to have data pass back and forth between the backend, where you're able to essentially make sure that it's not just a static web page, but something that's a bit more dynamic and able to help you, to gain some more functionality. Hence, coming to the big concept that we'll be exploring today for front end, which is React. React itself is a JavaScript library. It's used for building user interfaces on the front end and also kind of gives an opportunity to utilize bits of code from JavaScript that we don't need to do manually because um, coming from a high level, JavaScript itself can be very, very, very tough to code manually without any community packages or any external resources. This is just an example of that to simplify the process of development and to also give more concise and clear terms of building. As I bracketed here, it's basically like Lego. We have certain things called components, as you'll learn later, that can be reused and copied to be applied into certain scenarios that you want for your build. And of course, React itself is not just supported by the web, but also has an alternate called React Native, which you can use for your own development on local applications. Now, the question that commonly comes up is what is the difference between a library and a framework? You may have heard the terms of a framework before in different researches like Angular, Vue, Next.js even. Um, One common theme is that they do both use external code to solve a common problem. However, the difference is that libraries are super flexible. You're able to apply them whenever, wherever you want in your specific piece of code, and you're essentially coding the way you use a library. Frameworks are a little bit more restrictive. They are the inverse. They invert the flow of control by having provided limited sections to place your own code. It's in this case, you're not essentially writing the entirety of it, but you place components for the framework as a whole to utilize and output as your application or website. However, on a more technical term, it's mostly just a set of tools and libraries for you to use. And to finally clear up, React is a library, not a framework. Now, where exactly can you find React in the world or in any of the software we use? Well, first off, you can definitely find it on Facebook and Instagram due to it being developed and maintained by Meta, the current parent company of Facebook and Instagram. Same thing can be said for WhatsApp, and it's mainly used on the kind of web interface that you might see alongside New York Times. Their usage of it is a little bit similar, mostly just for the user interface of their website. One surprising fact that I was researching through is that Atlassian uses it, more specifically on their Atlassian design system. And finally, of course, ChatGPT. Um, Given that it uses its user interface on the web, of course, it'll utilize React elements. Another vague difference that might be a little bit confusing, given we call it a JavaScript library, is the difference between JavaScript itself and React. JavaScript is a scripting language. It helps the site or app to have interactivity, as I mentioned before. But React itself creates reusable components from that JavaScript and then helps React to state or prop changes. It helps it more so to become a bit more dynamic and allowing you to kind of change the website on the go without needing to reload the entire page. Now, a term as you're scrolling through whether external websites or scrolling through React yourself is something called JXX. And that is the main file that's most likely going to be seen in the project today, alongside the other resources that we have. JSX is essentially an extension of HTML. We say extension, but it's a little bit more restrictive. But in turn, from being more restrictive, it helps you include it helps you include HTML inside JavaScript and going back and forth again to increase interactive ability. And of course, in JSX, you must return a single parent element or it won't compile, hence it being so much more restrictive. But I promise its use cases will be so helpful in the long run. And so now we're going on to Vite. Quick research, I've figured out that it's Vite and not Vite due to French terminology and its translation into the word quick, which is a very well-made term, given that Vite helps the build of our React template to be more streamlined. It improves the manual task of creating an entire JavaScript build into just mere seconds of running from Node, which we will learn in the future as well. Essentially, Vite is a JavaScript bundler and combines multiple JavaScript files into either one or very few files. And in doing so, it is helped to build our site skeleton and uses a React template off of that. The reason why it's useful is, as I mentioned before, is very quick to build, easily accessible, and utilizes React, which we're learning today. Now, coming into the Codebrew opening ceremony, we're going to be seeing that the front end presentation here today is going to be using Vite and React. How the backend presentation that you might have saw yesterday uses MongoDB and ASP. However, the full stack implementations for your actual project or your personal project possibly is really up to you. These are the main cases that we'd we want you to explore. However, there are also more industrial applications that you can research yourself. But as mentioned here, the main front end components that we recommend for personal use would be React alongside full stack frameworks like frameworks such as Vue, Angular, and also just going back to basic JavaScript if that feels easier, or a whole full stack framework such as Next.js. But again, that's all up to you depending on how you want to approach it today. Now getting on to the more practical slides. I believe this is where we can start helping you guys kind of set up your own Vite build alongside a React template. The first thing that we'd want to figure out is to download Node.js. Um, it's what would be the best way to describe Node? It's
NPM is not packaging.
yeah.
So it's the way we created earlier. So we have a preset created app form that you can take from GitHub and literally just tweak little bits and you'll have your own thing. Although the way to start an app from scratch. I'll try to do that. So NPM does do that. NPM does install new libraries. So we talked about in just a second, we'll talk about something called UUID, which lets you create a unique ID for an element when you're adding it to a database. It's going to be something called Markdown.
Yes,
So
that will be Markdown.
But it's not just these things. There's something called React dash icons. And this one lets you add beautiful modern icons to your web page. It's an extension. There's something called Planar dash motion. This one lets you do cool animations on your website, so like smooth scrolling. There's something with pop-ups, but pop-ups you can do them with the accents. But yeah, so NPM lets you do this stuff. And Node is the foundation of NPM, basically. Yeah.
After we download and install Node itself, we then set up the folders that we want to kind of organize our whole project into. Make sure you're able to have something somewhat isolated as to not interact with any other files and cause errors. Starting from here, I think we might want to give a little bit of time just for people to finish downloading, set up their own files, and then finally set up the Vite builds. Going through these steps, you go through the command terminal, and from the Node package manager, you create the Vite build itself. You can name your project folder, and then finally you kind of select React and then JavaScript. So if anyone needs a couple of minutes for that, please do so.
Just some quick notes. Whenever you see something called NPX, believe that's the older version of NPM. For use, if you're doing image search or whatever it is that you want to do NPM, not NPX. So NPX is up there at the top. So the times that I've experimented with both, I realized that whenever I do NPX, it only it deprecates between old and funny window. If you see something similar for NPM, I got them better where yeah. That's all the things.
Awesome.
Just yeah, not in that.
The next stages of building that Vite environment is changing your directory into the specific folder that you have your build into, if you haven't already. Once you go there, we'd essentially want to run the command npm I, which installs all of the um, dependencies. And going from there, we'd run the development build itself, and then we can enter the URL as localhost and enter it into our browser. And that should be the basic framework and skeleton of the Vite build. Do you want to A live example?
We can do an example when I start with the practical, but are there any other slides that I can cover?
I think the rest of the slides that will be coming up from now here on in will mostly be theoretical applications based on the practical components that you'll be seeing. So if there's any confusion, please put your hand up for questions, and we'll make sure to find a corresponding slide or explain it from the beginning.
Let's go with the practical bits. Okay, anyone need this anymore? No? All right, I'm just going to exit. And what we have is a little demo. So this is the finalized program that we have on GitHub. It has this front end. If I go here, I've got 3 nodes. I can add a node, I can delete a node, I can edit a node, but right now, if I do that, it won't let me because my program is not running. So if we're doing something from scratch, I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to open my desktop in terminal. Given that I have installed Node.js, I'm going to do npm create Byte at latest. And the at latest bit just makes sure that I'm getting the latest version of Byte or Vite, what do you want to call it. Project name, I'm just going to say Codebrew test. I'm going to say it's a React app. So now we've got multiple options. There's TypeScript, there's JavaScript. TypeScript is basically JavaScript, but you add types to it. If you would like to use the framework Angular, which you should not touch unless you want to do something really complex. If you want to do Angular, Angular is in TypeScript. And yeah, and like Raphael mentioned, there's also React, which we're doing, there's also Vue. I heard a very controversial opinion about Vue, so I'm going to say it may be worth picking up. It's definitely easier to pick up than React, but React is more widely used. But yeah, I'm going to do JavaScript. And now it automatically tells me, go into your folder, install. npm install is the same as npm I, which you saw on the slides. So it just basically says install all the modules, and then npm run dev, which runs the program. Now, I am not going to do that. The reason being the installation takes a bit of time. But I'm going to go in and show you what the folders look like. Okay, I have got 2 directories, and I've got all of these random files. Let's do these ones first. .gitignore, if you have a GitHub repository, we'll talk a bit more about it this afternoon. But when you set up your backend yesterday, who was here yesterday? Was anyone in the workshop yesterday? You were there yesterday, yeah? If you go back and watch the YouTube live stream, you'll realize that you have to put a connection string to your database. That should not go on to your GitHub because anybody can access your database. So what you do is you create an environment variable, look it up, environment variables, you put your environment variable in gitignore, it doesn't go into GitHub. That's one thing. All of these are configuration files. So here it tells you that this is a Vive program. And then readme is also for GitHub, and then index.html, which is the HTML file that references the project. If I open this one right now, it's not going to work. The reason being, I don't have the program running. And then the last bit is public. This is where we have some public things. I'm not going to go into this one because I personally deployed front-end and back-end programs, and I never needed to use public. Source is where you'll be doing most of your work. So the skeleton React program has an assets folder, which has images, graphics, and all of that stuff. If you have images on your website, which you very likely do, always have them inside of this assets folder, because that just makes everything much neater. And then everything else would go into separate folders, or it will go in these 4 foundational files. When you create your skeleton, go in, see what they have, but I'm going to move on in the interest of time to our program to show you guys what we have set up. So the way that we have it here, the first one, node modules, because in the other one I didn't do npm install. It doesn't have this folder, but this folder basically tells you which libraries are installed. So I can see I've got Vite, I've got Axios, which is relating to the API. We'll be talking about it a bit more. If you scroll down, there's something about debugging. There is ESLint. This one is, I believe, for JavaScript things. I can't remember what it was. I never had to use it. But yeah, if you scroll down, there's a lot of things that you don't need. So you could potentially just go npm install react-icons or whatever it is you need, but I'd recommend doing this one because you'll make sure you have everything. And this is what we have right there. Is this visible or is it too?
Is that run?
If I do that, is that better? Yeah. All right. So I've got app.jsx, app.css. I've got main content, and sidebar. Okay. All right. What does that actually mean? If I go to my website, which should be still showing, this is main content, this one here. This is sidebar. And that's it. That like a file for each. And then app and main. So app is the one that contains both of them, and main is the one that connects it with the HTML that displays stuff. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm in my parent directory, which is called backend linked. That's the name up there. What I'm going to do, I have two terminals open. You run the front end and the back end separately for them to communicate together. So right now I'm going to do cd front end. Oh, yep, sorry. cd front end. And then I'm going to do npm run dev. Click enter. And then it'll give me a URL. If I click on this one, it'll take me to basically this. Okay, wait, hold on. Hold on a second. Where is my stuff? I have a database. If I go here, this is MongoDB, we set it up yesterday. If I go here, I've got stuff. It's not showing because I need to run the backend. I go cd. My backend's called Nodes API down there. I would say call it backend. So have two folders, front end, backend. And then I go into Nodes API. Now running a .NET program, this is in ASP.NET. So I'm going to say .NET run. And now I will also get multiple links. So if I go back here and I refresh, it should show. There we go. So that's all of my data. This is basically the stuff that's in MongoDB. All right, so now I've got front end and back end running. Now we're going to talk about the logic of the program. Before we go into that, I want to highlight this a bit more. This is a very simple program. For Codebrew or for something else, you're going to have more stuff. Don't have all of it lying around just like that. One of my favorite examples is there's a guy on YouTube called JS Master. Anyone know him? So JS Master. This guy basically teaches front end. It's called like that. All right. What he does is he has a source file, a folder, just like the one we've got. But then this is what he has: assets, the same as the default one. He also has containers, and he also has components. And then he has HOC, which is higher order component. I'm not going to talk about this because it's more complex. This is intermediate React. I'll look into it. And then down here, he's got .jsx, and then main.jsx, JSX. And then his CSS files and everything else that comes with it. This is where you put your images. This is where you put sections of the page. So if you have, this is my website, this is my computer screen. This is my computer screen. But this is my website. And I need to scroll up and down. This is a section. So there's a container for this. And then if I scroll down, I can view this section, that's another container. And then I can scroll and view this section, that's another container. And then each one of these sections has a file in there, and then we reference it to app.js. And app.js will basically be the app code that references each one of those components, which we'll have in just a second. Sorry, that's containers. Components is more like we have a navigation bar. And as you're scrolling, the navigation bar is always there. So that's component. Containers are components. It's just the way that he does it. Definitely check it out. All right, now to the actual good stuff. Any questions about that? It's a lot of theory, but you'll see the code in a second. It's not going to go anywhere.
And going back to the content itself, we can understand if this might seem a little bit fast-paced, but do not be afraid to go through onto the YouTube live stream as it's all recorded. And so the entire process, going from the project being showcased alongside with theory that we've gone through so far, will be recorded to watch.
Yep. And we'll be around to help out afterwards if you also need anything. Okay. So this is my HTML file. I'm going to start off with this one. And this one is a simple HTML file. Who's touched HTML before? Has anyone done HTML? Yeah? Oh, yeah, everybody. Cool. It's just simple. Doesn't have anything special in it. If you look here, there is this link on top. So this is the icon of the page. Mine looks different because I have something local set up. It's got a little icon that says arcade. I'm Brahma, by the way. Sorry. So this 5.js is the stuff that's in the public folder that we were talking about earlier. But yeah, and now it references a JavaScript. This script is the file main.js. So we start with HTML, we reference a JavaScript file, which is over here. This is my main.jsx. Main.jsx does the main React stuff. So it imports creating a route, so the React client. This is what allows you to render a React component. Rendering a React component just basically meaning I have React code that I want to show on the screen. This does it. It references an app component after creating a route and rendering it. This is always the same. This it never changes. It's a template. And then you go into your app.jsx. I'm going to close this and I'm going to open main.jsx and sidebar.jsx. All right. I'll start with sidebar, actually. All right, so this is what a React component looks like. So we have sidebar and main.jsx. Like we said in main, it references app, right? So we have HTML file, main.jsx, React.js, app.jsx, and then app references two components, which are main and sidebar. You'll have many more. I had a project that referenced 8 components after app. But here, we're importing libraries. So for example, Axios is the API stuff. UUID, we'll talk about it in a second. And I've got my CSS files. We have an extensive amount of CSS. I'm not going to go through it in the interest of time. CSS is not something I can teach you. It's more of something that you really need to put in the time to practice doing it. But yeah, if we scroll down all the way, we will see there's a return. So the main structure over here. Doesn't like me. And act up is usually there's an import statement at the top, which does all of the libraries, all of your CSS files, all the stuff that you need. And then after that, you have a function, something, a component. It takes some arguments, and then it returns something. And then down here, you have a return state. And then here you have state management. That is so much easier. So the return. That's what it looks like. You see a lot of code there. If you open the skeleton app.jsx, you're not going to see this many things. It's going to be much simpler. But yeah, so what I'm doing right now is I'm showing a title, Notes 2025, which is up there. I have an app component, and it displays a sidebar and a main content. So what I basically have is I have a big thing called app. Inside of it, I have two things. I have a main content and I have a sidebar. That's basically all it is. If you look here, you see something called class name. In HTML, you know how you have classes and IDs? This is the same thing, but in React. It's instead of class, it's called class name. And then app is what it's called in app.css. So it is right there. And I've got all of these styles. AppJ has done an incredible job going through it and commenting literally everything. So yeah, when you're looking back at it, you'll have a lot of explanations as well. Sorry, I was here. Now, if you look at sidebar, it takes all of these states. All of these are states. They're like arguments. It's like you're treating sidebar as a function that's taking arguments, but the difference is it's a component taking states. It's a thing that is storing some sort of value or displaying some sort of value. And main content is something similar. To do a quick run through of these ones, main content, again, it's a function taking these ones. It's importing Markdown, which is the thing letting us, if I select one of these here, I can type stuff, it shows down there, but also if I do a little star, I have a list item. If I do a double asterisk, it does italics. And if you do double asterisks, it gives you bold. That stuff is what the markdown is, basically. So again, it has a return statement. What does it return? It says, okay, I want to show an input field and I want to show a text area, this one and this one. They have all of these styles. They have placeholders, which is title here, right or not here. This one, if I delete this one, will say title here. And the main thing is value and on change. Value basically means when I have a note and that note is in the database, it has to be. I would like to retrieve the title value and I would like to display that up here. So here is just saying active note. Active note is the note that is currently being displayed. So all of these are notes. When I click on something and it shows here, it becomes my active note. And that's a state. Text area has something similar, but it's displaying content instead of title. So if you go back and look at the database, there is content. So that's what basically what it is. And then on change is a React hook that says when I'm changing something in this input or in this text area or in this field, I would like it to update in the database. How does that happen? It happens through the onEdit field function that I have set up there. How does that work? Let's see. It calls something called onUpdateNote. This is when React is interacting with the API to communicate with the backend and tell it, I have an element, can you please update it? So it says, I want to take my active note. I want to give it a new text field key, and I want to change it to what the new value is. What is this? What is that? Well, if you scroll down here, you can see that I'm telling it, this is my input field for the title. So when I want to trigger this one, I want to do it to the title, and I want to make the title e.target.value, which is the current value of whatever is here. So if I say my new title, doesn't type, my new title, e.target.value is equal to whatever this writing is. There it is. So this value is new title. So I'm saying I want to set title to new title. This gets passed on to this one. This one says, okay, I want to call my update function. I'll show you that in a second. And whatever field that I listed there, which in this case is title, I wanted to set it to whatever is listed there, which is new title. And we create a new field for created at because we are maintaining the time that it was last modified. But yeah, just a little note. Same thing for content. I'm going to skip through that. We're 11:15. And then the next bit, this one, is basically this. Showing the markdown, taking this one and interpreting it as markdown. my active node and the title, my active node, and what its content is. Now you will realize that what if I don't have anything created? What if I don't have any notes being selected as active? So if I refresh, it says no note selected. So the way this works is I passed in two states, right? What is my active node? What is my updated? What do I want to update? And I'm saying at the very start, if there's nothing passed on as active node, so when I click on something here, it is passed on as an active node. If there's nothing selected, I want you to show this. Otherwise, do this. That's basically what it's doing. All right, enough of that. Sidebar is taking many more things. It's taking notes, taking on add node, on delete node, which are the two functions that add a new node and delete a new node. Why are these ones passed here and they're not passed in main content? And why is main content taking the update one and it's not taking the new and the delete? It is simply because my sidebar has an add node button and has a delete button. But my main content, you can't add something, because remember, we said this is a component and this is a separate component. They're two separate things. They look on the same page, but they're two separate things. This one is adding and deleting. This one is not. So this function, my sidebar, takes the adding, takes the deleting, but it doesn't take the update. If I go back to my main content, it takes updates, but it doesn't take add and delete, simply because when I look at my interface, there's no add and delete in this section. It's just not there. So I don't need to pass it. And then active node and setting an active node. Why is set active node there? Set active node is the one that sets this value. How? Why? We'll see it in a second. Because all of that logic is in app, which has the meat of the program. It's because from sidebar, I can select something and set it as an active node. Okay. All right. So I have a button that says I can add a new node. When I click on that button, I trigger this function. And then if I scroll down, there is map.node. There's a lot of explanation there. I'm just going to skip it. And I'm going to say, okay, I would like to have a button that lets me add a new node. And when I also have it, I'm also able to delete something. So if I click on my new node and I delete it, and I come back to my database and refresh, it should disappear. There we go, it's gone. All right, now that's done. This is just simple React. Yeah, this is the one that's showing the date. So you see how this one is a bit smaller? This is what it's doing. And that's it. Now let's get into the actual React. Okay, this file. I have an app component. The very thing, I have something called use state. Who knows React states? Anybody? React states? Yeah? Yeah? Cool. Two people. Nice. A React state, you can think of it like a Python function where it has a self dot value. If I have my Python function, so I have a class called cat. We would have self.name and self.breed for color. That's also the same thing as a React state. Wait. So notes is my state. So this is the state that's storing what my current notes are. So everything that's in here is being stored in notes. Hence, when I'm starting sidebar, I pass notes to it because sidebar wants to see all of the notes. So I have a state storing what the notes are, and I pass that to sidebar. And the other one is set notes. So React doesn't let you change something directly. It doesn't let you go like Python and be like x is equal to 3 and then change your mind, go x is equal to 4. No, you have to go through a function all the time. I don't know why. You can look into the theory, but that's just how you do it. And I'm initially, so what I put inside of the brackets in use state is the very initial value at the very, very, very start. And this basically means when I first open the program, at the very, 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 very start, before I touch anything, it's an empty list. And then when I retrieve values from the database, then this gets populated. And I have another state down here called active node. So again, when I click on this, I have set an active node. If I click on this, I have changed my active node. And we need to know this because main content would like to know which one I'm currently viewing, and sidebar would like to know which one I'm viewing because they would like to color it. They give it a different highlighting. Hence, when I go to main content, I can see it takes an active node, and so does sidebar. Again, why does sidebar take a set active node? Because I can change which node is active through sidebar. So sidebar would care about this one. Does that make sense? Is that useful? Should we stop? We can end it now. No? Cool. All right. Okay. Um, so if I scroll down here, you will see I've got a function to add a new node, delete a new node, update a new node, get an active node, and I also have my return. So we can see that when I'm doing sidebar, you know how I pass the states, they come up here. That's where it's going, giving it all it needs. That's basically everything down here. I'm going to go back up to do these things. Now, before I can do CRUD operations and communicate with my backend and get whatever I have in my database, I need to say where I need to get the information from, which is when I use useEffect. So useState and useEffect. useState stores particular values in my program, whereas useEffect is operations that happen on the side. So for example, if you have an app that needs to get something from the backend, communicating with a database, the connection is established through useEffect. But also, if I have a simple app that keeps account of time, so like if I have a little web page that says when I hit 10 seconds, I want you to flash a red light. And when I hit 30 seconds, I want you to flash a green light. And when I hit 60 seconds, I want you to flash a blue light. That timer is in useEffect. And then you have to do async operations and things. So when you refresh your page, it doesn't change. All stuff you can do. Okay, what this is basically doing is we're making use of fetch. So fetch Axios. You can use one or the other. Here we've used both to show you what both of them look like. There's fetch and there's Axios. Axios is at the bottom here, a part of this. But here we're using fetch. So what I'm saying is I have a locally hosted website in this particular port, and I would like to retrieve the values stored in it. So because that's how it's called on ours, but you will have to change this. So this is my backend. It's on 7057. If you were at the workshop yesterday, you'll see Swagger. Swagger is a little program that lets you test the API and the backend connection. A similar one is Postman, which is more industry focused. But if I go onto my website and I put host API nodes, if I copy this one, put it there, I should be able to view my JSON. These things are basically what's here. You need a proof. If I just click this is basically my notes. Okay. So the way frontend and backend interact is backend goes, I want to send this information to this particular link, and frontend goes, oh, I think that this link has particular information, and I want to get that information. And that's how it basically works. It took me so long to figure that out, but it was so straightforward. That's how they basically communicate. So this line is saying, I want to get whatever information is at that link. When you deploy your website and you have a proper domain name, it's called myfunnywebsite.com.au or whatever you want to call it. This link would need to change and not say localhost anymore. This is 7057. Yeah. That would need to change. It doesn't stay as localhost. This is on my local machine, hence it's localhost. All right, so I'm going to fetch it. And then after I fetch it, I want to take the result of this fetch. I'm passing an argument. So the way this works is, even if it's anything. Can I just, anyone needs anything from me? All right. The way it works is I'm saying fetch something, dot then. This is an argument. But because I'm using dot then, this argument is equal to whatever is the result. So we made it easy for ourselves and called it results, which means you do that, and then you write that's yes. Oh, really? This, and here you do the logic. So based on the result of this, I'm gonna take that result and I'm gonna start with it. And what we're doing is the first time we're printing it onto the console. This is good for error handling and stuff. But then I'm saying if the result is not okay, so what could the result be? It could be a 200 okay, it could be a 404 not found, it could be a 500 server error, it could be a gazillion other things. You can look it up. But I'm saying, so result.okay is 200. So I'm saying if it's not 200, if I have some sort of error, I don't care what it is, I just want to throw a new error and I want to say that the response was not okay. So the program crashes. Well, crashes in a good way. It could crash in a bad way. Otherwise, I just want to return what my JSON is. So that's what we did. We went through this one. We were like, give me the result of that. And I want you to show me that thing as a JSON. And that's what we did. I'm seeing a JSON. So it's working. And then I'm going to take the result of this, whatever the result of that is, and I want to pass it on as data. And I want to set the list of my notes, this one, to whatever that data is. So I am basically taking these ones over here, and I'm setting them as my notes. Hence, when I pass them to my sidebar down here, when I say my sidebar takes my notes and my sidebar displays my notes, logic is in that file, I'm not going to go into it. I'm able to see everything here. Do we get how it works? Sort of? Yeah? All right. And the next piece is just the error handling bit. One really common mistake is people forget the square brackets at the end. So this is a use effect syntax. If I get rid of this, this is not going to work. Use effect always has a square bracket at the end, and you can pass things there. So if you're like refreshing your website, but you want to store some values on there as you refresh, they would go in the square brackets. But for a simple program, you don't need to worry about it too much. All right, so now I've established a connection. I know where my data is. Now I want to use this particular link or variations of that link. If I go, this was taught yesterday. But through Swagger, I can tell these are all of my links. So I can get something, I can add a new thing, or I can update some values or delete something. All right, first one is adding a note. I put to the console a little message saying, let's add a new note. Again, error handling. First up, I use the library UID to say I want to generate a new string, which is my primary key. So who's done database systems? You guys done database systems? Database systems would have, yeah, you've done it. So primary keys and secondary keys. Yeah, this is basically what it is. And a funny thing is you could create a timestamp, which AvJ does do. Down here, you can create a timestamp. Timestamps, I'm pretty sure, are unique always all the time. Like it can't be different. So you can just use that as a primary key. But yeah, what he does is he creates a new primary key, removes all of the dashes, and makes it an empty string. So it now looks like this thing. It's just a random combination for a primary key. And then I'm saying I'm creating a new thing. So this is a variable. I'm making it a constant. So once it's created, I cannot edit it unless I am communicating with my API and saying I want to update a node. You okay? Creating new nodes, setting an ID, setting a title, whatever the content is. So it's saying originally it's an untitled one and it's empty content because if I go there, add a new node, it says it's an untitled node and this one is empty. And then scroll down. Now we're using Axios. So we said fetch an Axios. Axios is saying I want to send a post request, get and post. Get is when you want to get information without changing anything, whereas post if you want to add new information. And I'm saying I want to send to this URL whatever new node I've created. And then my set of nodes up there, I want to set my new nodes to be the new node that I just created and the list of nodes that I already have. So this is basically a spread operator, which is simply a shortcut for saying I want to set my nodes to new nodes and then node 1, node 2, node 3, which are basically inside of nodes. But yeah, just a shortcut. You could literally write a for loop to iterate through it and create a new one, but this is an easy way of doing it. And now quickly going through the other ones. On update, I want to say that I want to modify this date down here. So I create a new one. And then I will use a put request, different get post put and delete to this API, but I want to give it a particular ID. So I'm saying I have a node, it has a particular ID. I want to communicate with that particular node with that particular ID, and I want to change its details to whatever is listed down here. Again, extensive notes. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep going, but you can go through it and check out what it's doing. And at the very end, there's always error handling. Don't forget that. If you're doing development on the website and it's not showing you any errors on the screen, it's still not working, you've got two options. You either go right-click, inspect, and then you can view the console from there, and it'll show you all of the errors on there. The other option is you can use the terminal. So remember how we have a front-end terminal and a back-end terminal. Right now it's all good, so it's showing me the nice things. And this is my front-end one. It also looks good. It'll show you a lot of writing if there's something wrong with it. But yeah, before we do on active node, I'm going to show you the delete one real quick. Again, Axios, delete. I'm also sending a particular node that I want to delete it. I'm sending its ID. And then I am setting the value of nodes to a filtering of, I have a list of nodes. I want to filter out the node that I don't want because I've deleted it. It shouldn't appear in my database anymore. So we just use the filter. The other way is you can go through nodes in a for loop and be like, is the ID the same? No, skip. Is the ID the same? No, skip. Is the ID the same? Yes, take it out. Easy, simple FOC content. All right, that's closed. Get active node is basically just saying, I have a list of nodes. I want to know which one of them is the current active one. So which one of them is there. This is basically done through this function. And it's a helper function that you can call from other places. And I think that was about it. Any questions? It's pretty simple, but I would like to take any questions because it's very hard for me to see what's hard and what's easy. Any questions? Anything anyone has concerns about? I'm going to stick around a bit later, probably until 11:50 to take any questions you guys might have if you want to come down. But yeah, was there anything else?
Thanks. Go through the slides, it's like a summary, and then do the files.
Oh yeah, I just remembered. So when you're working on your Codebrew project, you can either use what we've taught you, or you can go off and do something else that you're interested in. One little note, it is a lot easier for you to set up JavaScript and get it up and running, especially for your backend. So if you're interested in doing, for example, Node.js, which is a JavaScript framework, there is a guide on CISSA guides. So there should be a link on our link tree that takes you to Notion guides. And there's a link. So there's some learning resources there for you to pick up a different framework to ASP.NET. So that stuff we taught yesterday, should not be saying this live. If you want a job, don't learn JavaScript. Learn C#, learn .NET. That's what you should do. It's a lot harder. But if you want a job, that's what you learn. You learn cloud. You deploy a solution with cloud on Azure, AWS, whatever it is. I don't care. And C#. And then you put it on your resume and everybody's going to be impressed. But if you want a cool app that you can go into the code presentations and be like, and look how beautiful this is, you use JavaScript. Don't use .NET because it's not going to give you that. It's something way more complex. But yeah, I just want to say that. Is that on the recording? That is on the recording. Oops. Yeah. Anyways, that is about it. I've covered everything. If we go back to the slides, so there's a lot of theory here. If you didn't understand what I was talking about, you can see it here. Feedback. We do actually read it when it does come through. If you have any thoughts, please send it through so we can actually make these better. The CISSA guides are online. They don't have a link there, but if you just go CISSA Linktree, and then CISSA guides is down there. And if you open that, there is a guide to Next.js or Node.js, and there's Express.js. There's a bit more on .NET, but I would recommend you take a look at this one in particular. This was made last year by a senior developer who happened to start doing a master's at Melbourne Uni and joined our club. And then he realized people don't show up to classes, so he dropped out. Anyways, he wrote this for us. So this is expert content. But yeah, there's other stuff. Feel free to check it out. I'm going to stop the